This is the first of two short videos on keeping an architecture notebook. The second will look at content, but this first video just offers some thoughts on the materials you might use. Over 50 years or so, I've used various different combinations of paper and drawing instrument. My conclusion is that the best approach is to follow the timeless advice, keep it simple. But within that simplicity, there are definitely some subtleties to take into account. Although I use digital a lot, I continue to believe there is something special about the experience of using actual paper with a pencil or pen. There is a sensual pleasure, for example, in feeling the point of a suitably soft graphite pencil on good quality paper. So I shall deal with those first. Also, when roaming the world, a physical notebook is more resilient, less prone to terminal damage or theft than a tablet. You can drop it on a stone floor without it suffering too much, and however beautiful your drawings are, there is less temptation for someone to nick your notebook than your iPad. On the downside, rubbing things out to correct them on paper is more laborious and less complete than the instant click needed on a computer. Similarly, sorting, searching and sharing are more problematic with a physical notebook than using digital. The layers available in most software can be very useful too, but more of that in a moment. First, let's look at the two main combinations of paper and drawing instrument that I have used. The first of these is a simple bound notebook with card covers. I use a type that will fit in my jacket pocket, so it's easy to carry everywhere. The paper is plain, no lines. I've chosen this sort of notebook because the paper is thin enough to be able to just about see a gridded underlay. The grid is very useful. It keeps written notes neat, but more importantly, it provides a framework that is in harmony with most architecture. When you're drawing the plan or section of a building, you can use the grid to keep things rectangular and also to provide a scale. 1 square might be equal to 1 inch, 1 foot, 1 meter, 10 millimeters or whatever. The grid also helps you gauge proportions. Here you can see that I've used the grid both to draw the plan of and explore the geometry of a small Japanese tea house. I would say that this grid is an essential addition to your notebook, providing that its paper is thin enough to be able to see the grid through it. Some people use paper with a grid printed on it so they don't need an underlay, but I want to be able to scan my drawings without a grid, so it has to be removable. I always use a pencil with this sort of notebook. I do so because of the tactile satisfaction I've already mentioned, but also because I can rub it out to make corrections. These are my favourite pencils. I use a 0.5mm lead with a B softness. I like the thin lead for accuracy and fineness in my drawings, but I like the B lead softness for tonal variation. To sound a bit like Goldilocks, HB is just a bit too hard and 2B just a bit too soft, so B is just right for me. If I press a B pencil firmly, I can get a good dark line, but I can also draw light lines to build up a drawing progressively. Different coloured leads are available too. You might use these to differentiate different parts of an analysis. With this sort of pencil, I do not need a sharpener. Just a few firm strokes on a scrap piece of paper makes a nice sharp point. It also creates a flat side to the end of the lead, which is ideal for shading. You will find your own subtleties to using these pencils. They also have a built-in eraser. So this is the combination I carry with me all the time. A simple pocket-sized notebook with a gridded underlay and a few technical pencils with different coloured leads. Equipped with these, I can do just about everything I need. Many of the drawings in my books are scans directly taken from one or other of the many notebooks I filled over the years. We shall return to this notebook in the next video to look at the sort of content you might collect. But next, I shall show you a different combination of paper and drawing instrument. Just briefly, the second type of notebook that I've used quite a lot is a loose leaf file. And the advantages of this is that you can use different sorts of paper, whether it's tracing paper or normal white paper. Again, I find it important to use a piece of gridded paper, graph paper perhaps, as an underlay to give control over the drawings. The other advantage of this is that you can use plastic pockets that you can keep scraps of paper or postcards or other sorts of notes. You can also rearrange the material using dividers, so you can keep different sorts of drawings in different sections of your notebook. So the flexibility with this sort of notebook is quite a bit greater than using the normal bound card-covered notebook that I showed you a few minutes ago. With this sort of notebook, personally I don't like the feel of graphite pencil on tracing paper, so I always use, with this sort of notebook, a thin rotary pen or technical pen. Again, I have a preference for using fine nibs. I use a 0.1 nib on a rotary pen for drawing on tracing paper. I have used this method quite a lot particularly when preparing drawings for my books. I've got about 4 of these thick lever arch files. Gives you some impression of the amount of drawings I've done for the books over the years, and particularly in the early books I've used this method because it gives clear drawings on the page of the books. So as I say, I've got about 4 of these big thick lever arch files full of drawings that I've done for my various publications. The digital alternative is, of course, to keep a notebook on a tablet. Even so, I would strongly encourage you to do so using a stylus to draw, as if with a pen or pencil. There are many note-keeping apps available. The 2 I tend to use most are Notability and Adobe Fresco, both on iPad. There are just too many factors to take into account using an app to keep a notebook. You'll have to explore them for yourselves. I must say, as I've indicated before in these videos, I tend to prefer using a physical notebook. When I do use digital, I try to replicate the process I go through when using a physical notebook. The engagement between your brain and the architecture you're analysing is so much more direct when you have to spend time carefully drawing or tracing plans and sections. The other software that I tend to use is Photoshop. I use this on a professional quality graphics tablet made by Wacom, and I find that using Photoshop on the graphics tablet, I can do drawings, conventional architectural drawings, with all the advantages that using Photoshop bring. You will find your own way. Keeping an architecture notebook, if it is to be really useful to you as a designer, involves investing care and time. In the next video, I shall look at the sort of content that you might collect in your notebook.